Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into some really interesting source material sent over by one of our listeners. We're going to try and pull out what's really key, maybe what's surprising.
Yeah, exactly. Not just a summary, but digging for those insights that might, shift how you think about a topic that's definitely getting a lot of airtime.
And that topic is medications like semaglutide.
Mm.
We hear so much about the biology, right?
hmm
Weight loss, blood sugar, all that.
hmm
But the sources we have here, some field notes from something called the Quiet Window, and this framework, the Dan Hollis protocol, they suggest there's something else going on, something, well, deeper, more human.
It's true. It's easy to focus just on the numbers, the physical stuff, but
Yeah.
these sources, they really argue the biggest changes, maybe the hardest ones, happen inside, when that sort of biological chatter quiets down.
Yeah, and the bit that really leaped out from those field notes, the thing that grabbed us, wasn't actually the weight loss for this one person. It was this unexpected feeling,
Mm-hmm.
or lack of feeling,
Right. The absence of the food craving, something that had been there for like decades.
suddenly gone. A silence. And one source actually calls it stepping into the quiet window.
Okay, so let's unpack that. The quiet window. The notes talk about this woman, Kate, 46 years old. She's a couple of months into taking semaglutide.
And physically. Things are going well, weight's down, blood sugar's better, minimal side effects apparently.
But she tells this Dan Hollis person she feels like a ghost in her own kitchen, which is wow.
That phrase really lands, doesn't it? Feeling like a
Oh.
stranger in a place that used to be so central, so familiar, a place of routine, maybe coping.
There's this specific moment mentioned. She walks past the pantry. For 20 years, that walk meant something, a pull, right? A negotiation, a signal.
But this time, nothing. The notes say nothing reached back, just quiet.
And that is what Dan Hollis apparently calls the quiet window. That moment when the old ways you answered questions, often with food, just stop. The food stops answering your questions, the notes say, and the real ones start talking.
And it's an important note, according to these sources, this quiet isn't like instant bliss or peace. It's described as unsettling.
Yeah, Kate isn't sad exactly, but it's like her brain is suddenly too quiet. Or her house. It feels empty of the old static. She says, everything feels like truth now.
Like the raw feeling under the habit. And the sources mention something that feels a bit counterintuitive, maybe. The grief of losing the thing that numbed you.
Even if it was harmful, right? It was familiar. It was a rhythm. Kate apparently missed the signal itself, missed that story she told herself. At least I know how to feel full.
So it wasn't just about being physically full, it was a predictable feeling, a known quantity. And when that disappears,
The underlying emotional stuff, whatever it is, just comes right into focus. Sharp focus.
and this is where the sources say Dan Hollis's work really kicks in. Not with the scales or the lab results, but when the person starts hearing, as they put it, the echoes of all the years they use food to muffle the deeper questions.
The static clears and you're just left there with yourself.
So what are these deeper questions the sources mention?
They're pretty big, actually. Things like, what am I hungry for when I'm not hungry? Or who am I without the chase? And what's left when the noise goes?
Wow. Yeah, those aren't exactly dietary questions, are they? They're existential.
Right. So the medication isn't solving that kind of hunger. It just maybe creates the space where you can finally hear it, feel it.
And the source says Hollis offers scaffolding.
Yeah.
What does that mean here? Is it like support?
It's described as more than just cheerleading, which often doesn't last. It's about building momentum.
Mm.
And it's not about restriction, which people resist, but about recognition, seeing the patterns, the triggers, what you really need underneath.
Okay, so the semaglutide itself isn't the scaffolding then?
No, the sources seem pretty clear. The drug doesn't fix the emotional stuff.
Mm.
It, how did they put it? It clears the runway so you can finally see what's trying to land. It creates the quiet needed to see the real work.
And that real work, that's what the second source, the Dan Hollis protocol, gets into. It's framed not as just like how to use the drug, but as a conversation between your biology, your behavior, and the emotional blueprint.
Yeah, it positions the medication as a window to change, a tool to help with a bigger process, not the goal itself. And it lays out 7 points for sort of navigating this.
Okay, let's get into those 7 points. First one, start with silence. Sounds like it connects directly back to that quiet window idea.
It does. It basically says, when that physical craving signal shuts off, don't just ignore the space. Use it. When the cravings stop, the truth begins. That's the quote.
So just listen, observe what comes up without the usual food distraction.
Pretty much. Listen without judging it. Just notice.
Okay. Point 2, Rewire the rituals. The idea here is that the habits around food, they're wired in, right?
Mhm.
Neurologically. They don't just vanish with the hunger.
Exactly. So you have to actively replace them. The protocol suggests things like taking a walk when you'd normally reach for a snack, or maybe journaling or connecting with someone. The medication helps you see the automatic rituals, highlighting what needs rebuilding.
Makes sense. You took away an old tool, you need to build some new ones.
Mhm.
Okay, point 3 is interesting. Anchor identity before the weight drops. What's the risk here?
The sources warn about this kind of lag. Your body changes faster than your identity. That internal sense of self can take time to catch up to the physical changes.
Yeah.
So the crucial work, even though it's invisible, is asking, who am I becoming? Without consciously anchoring that new identity, the protocol suggests your brain might even sabotage the physical progress.
So the inside story needs to match the outside reality. Okay, point 4, pace the process. This sounds like slowing down.
Yeah, but it's framed as metabolic pacing, not speed. The key idea is fast results don't mean lasting results. It's about giving your emotional self, your psyche, time to integrate the physical changes. Because rapid change without that internal catch-up, the sources warn, can lead to a kind of collapse later.
Let the inside catch up with the outside. Got it. Point 5 is about looking ahead. Plan the off-ramp from day one.
This seems pretty key to the protocol's long view. It assumes the medication might not be forever for everyone. It says the real work begins after the medication.
Hmm.
So planning for life without the drug, right from the start, is framed as essential. Because relapse often comes from those unaddressed patterns resurfacing when the medication stops.
Okay, proactive. Point 6, build the scaffolding. This is that support idea again.
Yes, but described specifically as neurobiological scaffolding, meaning it's not just nice to have, it's structurally necessary for building new pathways.
So what does that look like?
Things like intentional emotional support, finding a community, having structure in your day, developing language to talk about it. There's a great line, AI gives info, but humans deliver meaning. Need both.
Humans deliver meaning. I like that. Okay, final point 7, rewrite the narrative.
Yeah, this ties a lot of the identity work together. The sources make this distinction. Weight loss is biology. Staying there is narrative. So the protocol involves actively helping people challenge and rewrite those old stories about failure, food, self-worth. Because, the framework points out the medication can't prop up a story like, I don't deserve this.
So putting it all together, this Dan Hollis protocol,
Yeah.
it's not just about managing medication. The sources present it as a bigger shift.
A total reorientation, it seems. The summary is quite powerful. From biology to identity, from medication to meaning, from shame to structure, from silence to strategy. And that, they argue, is how you make transformation actually stick.
And bringing it back to Kate from the field notes, you see hints of this starting to play out after that initial shock of silence. Not like huge overnight changes, but small things.
Yeah, small, deliberate shifts. She didn't eat through sadness one day, chose tea over more wine another night, took a walk that wasn't about calories but felt like a conversation with her future self.
The notes are clear. She's not fixed, not suddenly perfect.
No, they say she's not done, she's not fixed, she's not suddenly a new woman. But, and this seems key, she is here, in the quiet, listening. And that listening, engaging with what's inside, that's what the notes call the real protocol.
Which brings us to you, listening. If you happen to be in a similar place, maybe using medication like this and feeling that weird quiet, the lack of the old cravings, or noticing what else comes up in that space.
Well, the message from these sources is pretty clear. You're not broken. You're not messing it up. You might just be starting to actually hear yourself again. You're in that quiet window, and you're definitely not the only one there.
So I think what we've pulled from these sources today is that, yes, these medications are powerful biologically, but they also create this really profound space, this quiet window.
And frameworks like this Dan Hollis protocol, they really emphasize that the lasting change, the real transformation, comes from actually doing the work in that space, the emotional work, the identity work that becomes possible when the noise dials down.
It's that shift we talked about, moving focus from just the biology to building identity, finding meaning, swapping out old shame-based coping for new structures and strategies based on awareness.
Exactly. Structure and strategy emerging from the silence.
So maybe here's a final thought for you to chew on, drawing from what we've discussed from these sources. If your usual ways of quieting things down, your distractions, your coping mechanisms, whatever they are, if they start to remain silent, what truth, What deeper question, or maybe what old unaddressed story might you finally start to hear?